This is Dre, Recovery One Drones. I'm glad you guys made it back, and I want to give out some thanks to all those who commented on the last video, and there were a few comments that stuck out. Today, I want to address maybe some of those comments today, and one thing I want to say is thank you on a couple of notes. Thank you for the amount of comments, and thank you for the quorum that was presented in those comments. Like I say, we as a community, we share a common theme of being pilots. It would be FPV pilots, quadcopter pilots, RC fixed wing pilots, and so on and so forth. So we need to always try to remember to treat each other with a basic common decency at all times. And I want to thank you for that type of a decorum in the comment section. There were a couple of comments that stuck out. One particular was from a gentleman who challenged me to do my homework. And he brought up the court case of Jones versus United States under the Fourth Amendment. I have heard these comments made in other videos about the Fourth Amendment being used as the catalyst or the mainstay of why remote ID is wrong and it violates the Fourth Amendment. My background, I have a degree in criminal justice. I was a pre-law student. So like I said, regulations and laws are something that I draw to. Okay, I'm drawn to that. So today we're going to look at this case and how remote ID doesn't fall under the Fourth Amendment. I felt when the RDO, RDQ individuals who tried to fight our remote ID under that clause, I felt that was the wrong approach. I felt the safety aspect of our UAS flight should have been more of a factor than trying to bring under the Fourth Amendment. And we're going to discuss this case and how it doesn't. To give those who may not be into the law like I am, United States versus Jones is a case that happened in the Washington, D.C. area, Delaware, Maryland, so forth. It was a drug case. And what had happened is that the government authorities had gained a warrant to use GPS on a suspect's vehicle. Now, that's right off the bat is of a differential type thing, is what constitutes the use of GPS tracking. This was a known suspect of such activities, and they were basically trying to strengthen their case and cast out a broader net of individuals that may be involved, who this individual who was conspiring with. There were some problems with the execution of the warrant, of putting his GPS. The warrant was supposed to take place to a certain time frame. They were one day outside of that time frame. So there you have a technicality of they didn't get the GPS installed within the certain amount of days they were supposed to. They were one day outside of that. But that's not the core part of the case. The argument of the case was, like we always talk about, the expectation of privacy. Okay. And I'm going to read here on the government. It says the government attachment of the GPS device to the vehicle and its use of that device to monitor the vehicle's movements constitutes a search under the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment protects the right of people to be secure in their person, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. Here, the government physically intrusive on an effect for the purpose of obtaining information constitutes a search. This type of encroachment on an area enumerates in the amendment, which has been considered a search within the meaning of the amendment at the time it was adopted. This conclusion is consistent with the court's Fourth Amendment jurisprudence, which until the latter half of the 20th century was tied into common law trespass. Later cases which have deviated from the exclusionary property-based approach have applied the analyst of Justice Harlan concurrence with Katz versus United States. I need to research Katz because it's mentioned quite a bit in this brief, which says that the Fourth Amendment protects a person's reasonable expectation of privacy. Now, I'm not going to cut it short and say that's the end of it there. There's a lot more I'm going to go into in that case. Now, that last sentence, the expectation of privacy, will ring repetitively in this case. When we fly in the national airspace, there is no expectation of privacy. And this is why the Fourth Amendment argument doesn't really hold a lot of water. This is the same thing, because like I say, under the FAA, we are considered, one, as operators, we're considered pilots. Two, our aircraft, and I'm getting ahead of myself, our UASs are classified as aircraft. So when you fly in the national airspace, you do not have an expectation of privacy. And I'm going to say again, when you fly in the national airspace, you do not have an expectation of privacy. Because I say, once again, we're thinking small-mindedly and not thinking of the wide range of our decision making here. Because if a UAS has an expectation of privacy, how come a private aircraft owned by a private party, as we do our UASs, why can't they have an expectation of privacy when they fly a manned aircraft in the national airspace? They don't. And the same thing with commercial airlines. There is no expectation of privacy when you fly in the national airspace. Okay. Now we'll continue on here. It says, because Jones' Fourth Amendment rights did not rise or fall with the Katz formulation, at the bottom, the court must assure preservation of that degree of privacy against the government that exists with the Fourth Amendment was adopted. And he has some other cases, Kylo versus United States. Katz again is mentioned. Another case of Soledad versus Cook County. And mostly all these are all drug cases. So basically you have individuals who have been identified in all unlawful activity. That's another thing. When you try to use court cases, court decisions, you need to do your homework and figure out what was the purpose and the use of whatever device or whatever principle or facts you're trying to bring forth. Because like I said, I'm a fact person. I looked this case up. I've read it. I remember this case several years ago, but like I said, didn't have no need for it, so I pretty much forgot the details. So that's why I'm going through now. I'm reading this right now from a website that puts out the decisions of the Supreme Court and other judges in the appellate court and so forth. It even tells me who was on what side. It tells about Scalia delivered opinion, Roberts, Chief Justice, Kennedy, Thomas, Sotomayor, others, Ginsburg, Breyer, Keegan, all had their opinions on this case. So we're going to go down here. Justice Scalia delivered opinion of the court. We decide whether the attachment of a global positioning system, GPS, tracking device to an individual's vehicle and subsequent use of that device to monitor the vehicle's movements on a public street constitutes a search or seizure within the meaning of the Fourth Amendment. In 2004, respondent Anton Jones, owner and operator of a nightclub in District of Columbia, came under suspicion of trafficking in narcotics and was made the target of an investigation by a joint FBI and Metropolitan Police Department task force. Officers employed various investigative techniques, including visual surveillance of the nightclub, installation of a camera focused on the front door of the club, and a PIN register and wiretap covering Jones's cellular phone. Based in part on the information gathered from these sources, in 2005, the government applied to the United States District Court for the District of Columbia for a warrant authorizing use of an electronic tracking device on the Jeep Grand Cherokee registered to Jones's wife. A warrant issued authorizing installation of that device of the District of Columbia within 10 days. This is why I said they missed it by 1 day. On the 11th day, the device was installed. Okay. And it goes on about the investigation and all this kind of stuff. Now, getting back to their decision on the use of GPS tracking device, as we said in the beginning, the Fourth Amendment protects us from unlawful search and seizures of our homes, our vehicles. This is why if you get stopped for a traffic violation, you don't automatically have to allow the officer to open the trunk or anything else. Now, once again, as an officer sees something in plain sight, you got a weapon on the floor, you got drugs or alcohol in the back seat, on the floorboards, whatever, that's a plain sight. You have now crossed over into what we call reasonable suspicion. That it allows the officer to continue his investigation, or using him or her investigation further into the condition of the driver or what may be going on in the vehicle itself. All right. And that's why I'm saying here that they're saying that the use of GPS in this matter, which was a warrant issued to do this type of activity, so to speak. But that's, once again, that's why the argument was that the vehicle was attached, so they knew his location. And this is where people are trying to get it confused with using UASs. Well, it's going to give our location. It's going to give the location of the operator and all these different things. Like I say again, there's no expectation of privacy in the national airspace. There's no expectation of privacy when you're out in public spaces. Okay. Now, if you're flying indoors in a facility, like I know a lot of FPV flyers go do the racing indoors, or you're flying inside of a building for a inspection or other uses, things like that, you don't fall on the FAA regulations if you're indoors. Okay. So two, there's no need for remote ID because you're not flying in the national airspace. So you have to look at all the factors that come into play. Okay. So that's what I'm saying, that, people want to pick and choose different facts and everything else. Because I'm the type of person, I'm going to go back and, as they say, do fact checking. That's what I do, fact check stuff. Okay. That's just my educational background, and my work is doing that, is fact check. I'm not always right, and that's why I will go do my homework to fact check, see what it is, find out what the details, find out the who, where, and why. That's what we should be doing here. So that's what I'm saying, that, when people bring up these court cases saying, oh, it's under the Fourth Amendment, and that's what I'm saying, that when they use that argument by the FPV guys who tried to petition to the FAA to not have remote ID, and my thing was they were trying to not have remote ID adhere to FPV pilots. And I thought that was a bad move on theirs. I said, you're talking about you want to separate yourself from the rest of the community for what? Because you say you don't fly above treetop level. You say you don't do this and that. Like I say, I watch the videos on YouTube and Facebook Shorts and TikTok and whatever else platform, Instagram, and I see guys doing dive bombs on buildings that are at least 100, 200 feet up. So that's not flying at treetop level. I mean, let's just be honest with ourselves. I'm not saying they were right or wrong, but let's be honest. Everybody does not zip around in their little small backyard and just fly below the treetops, because that's not what happens. Okay, we know we have a significant percentage of flyers who purposely go out and fly. And I say, there's a lot of different things that come into factor. And there's like, everybody doesn't post on YouTube, but the ones that do set the standards for everyone else. And that's why I tell people, be careful what you post online, because that is what the rest of us see. That is what these agencies see, is what you post online. And then we talk about, all the guys talking about bando flights and all this kind of stuff. Well, let's look at the facts of when you go fly a bando. One, if you go out and fly an abandoned building, in case anybody confused with what bando is, Two, are you trespassing on private property? Because there's not too many places going to have a abandoned facility that's not secured. If they do, they're opening themselves up to a lot of liability issues. They could be sued for someone getting hurt or anything that kind of nature. All right, that's why they have signs that say "Don't trespass" or a private property listed on it. So one, are you going on someone else's property to fly a bando? Two, this is what the reason why you will have encounters with the local authorities, because one, you're trespassing. 9 times out of 10, they're not getting called because you're flying a drone. You're getting a call because someone is trespassing on private property. So like once again, so now you have that issue. Trespassing is a minor thing unless you become a, as we use the term, Adam Henry, uh, so to speak, and then you talk yourself into a pair of cuffs. Ken Heron had a video with him and a buddy of his were out flying at a public park. Okay. They were approached by officers. Ken Heron's buddy took the attitude that he was obeying all the federal guidelines by the FAA, yada, yada, this and that, and so forth. Once again, just because something says public doesn't mean it's for public use of your discretion. Like I say, I look over a whole city of 250,000 people. Each department, the Parks Department has certain rules and guidelines for the use of the public parks. I have our facilities department has certain set of rules for everything from city buildings, parking structures, other places, and how they can and cannot be used. You know, just like I said, we have senior centers. You know, there's a certain amount of use that you can and cannot use. Libraries, certain criteria that fall under the library of what you can and cannot do. So this because something is paid by taxpayer dollars, it still falls under the jurisdiction of that department of what they allow to occur in their facilities or in their spaces. So a public park is not just a free for all to do what you want to do. And this is why you have municipalities, you have counties who have gotten a little wise that they may not control the airspace, but they can control the takeoff and landing space. So this is my little tidbit. I'm more than happy to continue this conversation. Like I said, I'm not here to bash anyone, but I want to dismiss the misinformation. So when somebody talks about court cases, I'm going to do homework. I'm going to look up that court cases and see if it applies to what we're talking about with remote ID. Once again, this is Dre, Recovering Drones. Like I say, appreciate the content. I like the debate, but like I say, a debate can only be done based upon facts. Okay, feelings are just that. That's your feeling, and like I say, your feelings manifest into an opinion when you say it out loud. So I can't argue how you feel about something. I can't debate how you feel about something, but I can always go in and fact check court cases, amendments, and regulations. And like I say, even my interpretation may be an error, and that's why I go look it up and see what the decisions of those who sit in those seats looked at it, and that's their job, is to make decisions based upon their interpretations of our amendments and our laws. So, like I say, again, this is Dre, Recovering Drones. As again, it's Tuesday. Man, it's Tuesday already. Have a blessed day. Fly safe. See you guys later. Bye.